Also his son. So the old man, kind for this little money. I thought I would hear a word, thanks from the other party. You should say thank you. What should you say? You should say, thank you for me. Gave you some money. You should say thank you. Hey, you're right. Unexpectedly. The wanderer. Not only do you not know gratitude, but still angry, about to snatch, always for his love. In the clenched teeth, he put a strong one. Unfortunately, dropped the medicine bottle, saving lives. The wanderer seemed to realize his anxiety, but still deliberately stepped on the medicine bottle under his feet. Need this? No, no. He also did not chase after, although the wanderer ran away. In order to maintain their medical condition, he quietly picked up the mill. Fragments of the medicine have broken. He looked for a sad phone. Near the bus station, called the number of the deceased wife. Listen to the message again to compare. The magic of stress. When the auto message ends, he slowly took out the fragments of medicine, scraps in bags. Looking out the window, the night scene is crowded with antique cars. Each state in his life are full of memories. Frank's whole life has been raised. 4 children, but came at the end of his life. He lost the only mate. Due to many years of painting work, overhead power cable. Frank suffers from chronic pulmonary palsy. He had to take medication every day too, prolonging the disease. Since his wife's death, Frank spends his days growing flowers and take care of plants. His happiest days are the holidays because of the 4. The children all came to visit him from afar. On Thanksgiving Day, he went to the supermarket early in the morning, buy the best biscuit and the most expensive bottle of wine, and swiped to buy a new oven. Frank waited until he was advised, but 4 children have not returned yet. The youngest son, Robert, is the first person to call. This brother told his father that the picture is not very good, so this time I couldn't get back in time to eat Thanksgiving with him. Frank did not blame, but only regretfully said to Robert, maybe he will miss the opportunity. Enjoy some good wine. Frank buttoned the camera to look at the photographer on the wall with a sad look. After that, he turned on the voicemail again. Eldest daughter Ami, because she is busy with work and take care of his son, so I can't visit this year. Dad at Thanksgiving. And the youngest daughter Josie is busy training for the dance performance. This weekend is almost impossible. Take some time. As for the eldest son David, not even calling, just asking Emmy to send Frank a message. In the quiet of the night, Frank sat in the courtyard. Many thoughts are murky. Joy and anticipation suddenly dissipate, which leaves Frank alone and lonely. Since his wife died 8 months ago, the children only go home in the crowd, increase, and then do not come back. Looking at the face has gradually faded. In the mirror, Frank decides to make a unexpected trip. He will visit each city where you are living. Before you go, Frank goes to see the primary care doctor. Due to the long trip, he asked prescription for half a month, but the doctor does not recommend. Encourage Frank to go away. Externally, he agrees with doctor's advice. But when I got home, Frank began to pack his luggage. He brought a camera and wrote letters to each of his children. Frank brings with him anticipation and great love. Embark on a long journey to see his family again. The first stop of all, he is New York, where his eldest son, David, lived. On the train, he met a woman. Frank proudly told her about their work. Every week he can paint, guard 1,000 wires, protect them from rain and wind, humidity and temperature. Frank also took out the photos of their children. The youngest son, Robert, is the captain of the band. The eldest son, David, is a painter. Youngest daughter, Joki, is a famous dancer. The eldest daughter, Ami, is the director, running an advertising agency. 4 children get success, as it is today, all thanks to a million wires that he painted to protect. Finally, the train arrived at the station. Frank takes a taxi to arrive David's apartment. When he arrived, it was already dark. Frank intends to surprise for David, but no one answered. In the meantime, he met a woman near him. Want to see my spring rolls? Do you want to see mine? Frank waited until late at night, but David still didn't come back. In the end, he went to find a motel near it. When passing by a room, art exhibitions, Frank saw a painting of David is shown inside. He unconsciously recalled the conversation, talking to David many years ago. What do you want to do when you grow up, huh? I want to be a painter. Painting yourself? No. Don't be a painter. Oh my God. The painter draws on the wall. The dog peed there again. The real painter can change the game. Children's lives. So what do you want to do? Being a painter? That's right. Painter. So you have to learn Work hard. Strange dad. I'm going to make you proud. I will try my best. Dad. God. The next morning, Frank waited at the door of David's house. Long time, but still not seen. Haven't looked at you. He had to insert the letter that had pre-written through the opening, then hurriedly set off to the next state. Like each stop in this journey, parenting is also a journey full of love. Every step is filled with love and the hope of parents. Frank used to watch the children grow day by day like the bright stars light the way for them. Frank was now in his late teens. He also needs the attention and affection from the children. After a long journey full of anticipation, Frank finally came home. Of the eldest daughter, friend, Ami is the chief executive at an advertising company. Her economic conditions are also quite more than 3 brothers and sisters left. Welcoming Frank to his nephew Jack. Jack was happy to meet his grandfather, but I haven't said for long. Jack hurried back into the house again for online classes. Ami was busy calling the place work by the pool, watching her daughter work attentively. Frank is like seeing an image. Ami when she was still on the edge. Ami was a little surprised to see his father coming. There was still anxiety on his face when Frank inquired about her husband Jack. Then she immediately became embarrassed and nervously held the phone in his hand. Ami knew his father couldn't fly. She couldn't believe he would arrest her. Buses all the way to Chicago. Seeing Jack come back, Ami hurriedly told him to give it. My grandfather went golfing. The polishing Jack is very standard. The boy is really a natural talent. In front of his grandson, Frank seemed much inferior. The 2 grandchildren played and talked for a long time. And Ami is still constantly calling in the house, as if hiding something. Frank asks about Jack's academic results, but doesn't seem to be the same as Ami. Once said that he was at the top of the class, until late at night. Jack hurriedly returned to the villa. The whole family rotated at the dinner table. Frank struggled to use a double chopsticks on the Chinese dining table. Eventually, Ami understood what her father meant, gave him a position. When Ami tells Jack to give Jack the jar of chili sauce, Jack deliberately showed his opposition to his father. Jack, give me a baby. I don't give you anything. Don't be so stupid. I don't like chili sauce. It's okay, you don't need it. The father and son began to talk. Sound again on the dining table. This scene made Ami extremely confused. Ami asked his father about his travel plans. Frank planned to stay here for a day or 2. We'll then go to visit the youngest son, Robert. Gosh. This made Ami a little awkward. Her schedule for the week was too busy. There is no time to take care of his father. Jack also had to go on a business trip, far away tomorrow. Jack still has to participate. Training camp of the school. The whole family signed the calendar. There was no time left for Frank. Where are you going? I don't know either. No one informed me at all. Frank knows what you're looking for. How to avoid being lazy. But he did not say it. But proposed. We'll visit Robert the next day. Ami offered to call Robert in advance, but Frank stopped. He wanted to give him a surprise. Externally, Ami agrees to her father's request. But that night, she called the brothers and sisters. The whole family knew that David was meeting Lies in Mexico and they don't want their father to worry more about that. The next morning, Frank took pictures around the villa. He even took a photo, family before leaving. However, the first sense of Tangerines is not willing to stand near his father. Watching the family get married in front of the camera, Frank felt deeply sorry for himself. There's a little more time left. The ship departs, so Ami, invite your father to visit the company of his own. Every time I see a beautiful view. Frank offered to take pictures, memory for her daughter. At her daughter's company, he also met 2 young employees. They're brainstorming a new ad. As the father of the AMI stack, the 2 young men also asked Frank about his opinion, although I feel quite proud. But Frank didn't say much. Just respond to them with a gentle smile. Oh, that's right. My daughter works. Super awesome. I know. It's very good. She also has a very beautiful hair. More. When waiting for the train at the station, Ami is still very busy. She needs to buy her father a cup of coffee. When the father and son were talking, Ami meets a colleague named Tom. Person who holds the position of director, creativity, in the company. Natural Ami introduces Tom with his father and Diane. Invite him to sit with him for coffee before boarding the train. Frank took out the letters that he wrote to each of his children. Frank still needs to ask Ami, are you happy? What do you mean? Are you happy? Yes. I'm happy, baby. Very good. Good daughter. Perhaps with any parental annoyance. As long as the children are happy, is the most important thing. Kia te. I'm Song. Frank continued his journey to Denver. The youngest son, Robert, has a concert here. Throughout the trip, Frank sees different landscapes and saves those beautiful moments. It seems that every child is a seed he planted. It's just that each particle receives light and blooms at different times. There are brilliant flowers right away, in a short time. But there are also seeds that need time, long time to bear fruit. Having just arrived at Denver Station, Frank saw the billboards, advertising of the band on the street. He was excited to ask passersby, "Take a shot of yourself." After asking everywhere, Frank finally found it, Robert's gym. But it turns out that things don't, just like he thought. Robert once said he was a musician. Chief. But what, Frank? I saw that my son is a drummer. This made Frank a little disappointed. Robert was also surprised to see his father. To such a surprise. Actually, Robert is not a conductor. He is just a drummer who lives freely. Do not preach. Compared to the training session, the father and son had a frank conversation. Robert never said, "I am a conductor." Over the years, Frank has only worked forever and rarely, when paying attention to their children's affairs. Everything he knows is made up of people. The late wife recounted, since childhood, Robert has loved to play heels. As a drummer in the band, there is not much pressure. He has also been able to perform around the world. This job is both comfortable and have a stable income. Everyone says you have talent. There is a correspondent. They're just polite. Father, you know, they often don't tell the truth. Actually, I've never had enough. Total. Hearing my son say that, Frank was not happy in his heart because of him. Knew Robert had tried so hard. He hopes he will continue his higher education, in terms of cost or anything else. Frank can help, but Robert frankly refused. You can learn from scratch. I will help you. That doesn't work, Father. If you can succeed, then you have succeeded. Besides, I'm not sure there. Is it what you want? Maybe you just do it. Let me please. Even if every parent want their children to be successful, but not every child can do that. Perhaps living freely and happily together, family is the most precious thing. Frank was going to stay and watch a session, Elle's performance. But the next performance of all, Robert was in Europe again. In the near future, he still has to practice with the band, so Robert, there was absolutely no time to be with his father, because life is constantly on the move. Until now, Robert has not had a able girlfriend. This made Frank feel worried. The band has a daughter. I've noticed a few people. So, pay attention to a few people. I find it suitable for the two of you. 2 or 3 chess girls. Come on. You have to take care of yourself. Robert. Dice. I'm trying to reconnect. House. Ami will call you. If he forgets, remember to call him. The whole family must keep in touch with each other. Are you happy? Have it. I'm happy. Before leaving, Frank asked the familiar question again. He wants to be sure of his children. Is there happiness or not? Although Robert has grown up, but in Frank's eyes, he was still a child. Frank did not give the letter to Robert, and quietly put it on the cell. Large drums in the gym. After my father left, Robert called Josie and said to her that Dad Willow arrived at about 10 o'clock. Frank continued his journey again. On the road near the bus station, Frank sees a sign, looking for missing people. Besides, there are a lot of flowers that have been reset. Frank called David again, but still didn't. Someone reminded the phone. That night, Frank was going to take a car to Las Vegas. But for the V, so he missed the last bus. Reluctantly, he had to wait for the trip. Follow. When passing through a tunnel, Frank meets a Vosaku man. Looks a lot like David. Frank kindly gave it to him. A few coins. But Vosaku repays the favor by stepping on it. Smashed his medicine bottle. Frank was both disappointed and worried. He only had a way to listen to the message again. Wife to calm her emotions. Finally, thanks to the help of Anne, a kind female driver, Frank also reached the next station. He took out a handful of shattered cigarettes from his bag. After you finish drinking, take it slowly. Fall asleep on the train. The journey of the day is not spring, as he thought. Obviously, there is something that the children are hiding him. In his dream, he saw his son again, even David. Of the 4 children, Frank was most worried about David. The next morning, Rosie hadn't seen her father arrive yet. She anxiously called the brothers and sisters to ask, but no one knows where Frank is, until Frank calls Rosie. The whole family can rest assured. Rosie rents a limo, longed in to welcome his father. She also invited him to eat at the rotating restaurant. Rosie arranged for her father a lot. Interesting activity, but Frank didn't want Rosie to have so expensive. He just wanted to know his daughter. Is life happy? Rosie took her father back to her apartment. She also prepared a large room for him. Seeing that my daughter is still as grim as ever, Frank felt very happy. He took some pictures for Rosie. Photo. Suddenly, a neighbor suddenly stopped by to visit, followed by a baby who had not yet been weaned. The neighbor asked Rosie to look after, help the baby for a while, because she had to pick up an important guest. Even if you can't eat at home, the line rotates. But the baby, this makes Frank happy again, more than ever. Watching the father play with the baby, a happy smile is evident on Rosie's face. That night, Rosie kept answering the phone. Frank also happened to hear a voice message. This apartment is mine, and I'm going to get it back. This will happen sooner than expected. So call me back. It turns out that Rosie's apartment is a rented house. Because I don't want to disturb my child. What Frank decided to do, plan to fly home the next morning? After all, his medicine is running out. Frank watched Rosie eat noodles, which reminded him of the days when she was a child at home. I remember my mother teaching me to eat. How are the noodles? Remember, even though my mother has been dead for 8 months. But sometimes Rosie still clicks the number to call my mother, but then Duke remembered that his mother was no longer there. Frank hopes that Rosie will still continue to call that number. At that time, he will replace his mother. He didn't understand why the children always call their mothers, and he is very rarely receive any calls. Everyone said that my mother always listened. No matter what happens, she doesn't complain. And Frank often give their own opinions. So in your eyes, he is somewhat different. The children are close. With my mother is also common sense. In this respect, David is the one who feel that most clearly. He was always afraid of disappointing his father. Rosie asked her father about her plans. He is for his children. But Frank actually never. There's no plan. When he was young, he only thought about have a stable job, get married and have children. After your children are born, he also only knows how to work to make money. Trying to be a father, so good in front of them. A conversation with Rosie made Frank reflect. Perhaps over the years, he was too strict. Inadvertently become a burden for the children. The next morning, after check-in, Frank also leaves Rosie a letter. This time, he wrote to all 4 children. Rosie watched quietly. Father's shadow fades away. The man who spent his whole life worried about children. Now it has really dissipated. Due to lack of medicines, Frank was forced to risk flying home. Unexpectedly, the flight met again. Thunderstorm in the middle of the road. Because there are not enough medicines, they are still violently shaken, causing Frank Lincoln had lung pain and fainting. In the toilet. In the meantime, he seemed to have a dream. In a dream, his children are still as small as ever. The whole family sits at the table, eat but only lack each wife, is deceased. Frank doesn't understand why. Why do you hide him? The day at Ami's house. Frank shows Jeff the next morning still, wearing a semi-shirt like the day before going to work. He guessed that Ami's marriage, and Jeff had a problem. He moved out 3 months ago. Jeff has another woman, so he must have hate him. At the bus station, the guy named Tom shook my hand. He wanted to leave a good impression on his father. Tom was waiting at the side of the car. I want you to see him. And Robert said he had to go touring in Europe, but on the streets full of easy. Poster of the show. The venue is obviously in Denver, where Robert was staying. Obviously he is trying to avoid his father's face. Even Josie, the little daughter, also hid his truth. The baby that the neighbor asked for in the household is actually his grandson. Do you know that you are carrying? Pregnant? Father Seal. Why did you do that? We were going to say to you. But at that time my mother was seriously ill. I don't want you to be disappointed. When Frank asked about David, the son he worried about the most, he still didn't say a word in the dream. When Frank tried to figure out what had happened, suddenly it rained heavily. His children rushed to their rooms. When Frank wakes up, the other 3 children were standing around his bed. Only David is missing. Frank knew for sure David had something wrong. Finally, under his questioning, Amy finally told the truth. David is gone, father. I'm sorry. Say to me. That's not true. Sorry, Dad, no. He's already moved out of the apartment. I know he's traveling. After that, we started to received a call from Mexico. There are too many lies. We want to know everything before telling my father. No. Not. He had a lot of difficulties. Dad, he's not happy. Since my mother died, he went through the time was terrible. We are all very worried about him. But, Father, we are not sure. I mean, Mexico, or maybe someone is confused. After my father visited me, I laid it out. Therefore, the new father could not stay. That's why we seal you. No, it's not my son. Not. They said he overdosed. No, it's not my son. Not my child. Not my child. That night in the hospital, Frank seemed to see David again. David smiled and said to him, "Sorry, Dad. It's not my fault. I've thought a lot about soy sauce. In the future. That's it. So, have you decided? Maybe I'll be a painter. Or maybe just do one simple work. Like a painter. No matter what you do, I'm proud of you. Really, really good. I told you that I won't stay long. Send your love to you. I will. Goodbye. Chash." "David Strange, I'm sorry. It's not my fault. Cha to David." David. After being discharged from the hospital, Frank received a package from the police. Inside is the invoice, David's press, and the letter that Frank had sent it to him earlier. Finally, Frank burst into acceptance. He went to his wife's grave to confide in her. The heart is still on guard. If it is possible to redo it from scratch, Frank will be less strict with you. As long as they are happy, it is enough. Now he can't see them. Children too. Can't tell them what to do. Every child has a child, their own way. Frank recalls his wife's things. "I used to talk about my children. He should have listened more. But at that time, work has swept him away." Shortly thereafter, Frank returned to New York. He went to the gallery the other day, wishing to buy back David's painting. But the staff said the painting had been sold. Seeing that Frank was a little disappointed, she asked for his contact address. But when Frank had just left, the employee immediately ran after him. "I just saw the name of the uncle above. List. You're so stupid. I should have realized it. It's okay. I'm really sorry." Turns out she's David's best friend. There are still a few pictures in the warehouse. His paintings. David is a painter of distinction. Unique. He has his own style. She took Frank to see one of the rest of the paintings. Frank was silent at David's painting. The picture is like a tribute received for him. It is also a tribute to the view, Frank's balanced life. Looking at David's last painting, Frank's heart for the sack, indescribable emotions. Only he understood the whole idea, the meaning of this picture. Time gradually disappears into beautiful things. Frank finally picked up, are celebrated at Christmas. This time, all three children are not naked. All brought their small families home. Frank went to the supermarket as usual. Rules for buying barbecue, fresh and fine wine for the children. True happiness is simply like that. Every time night falls, I miss the warmth of my family again. The warmth of childhood is brought by parents, and the warmth of the future is something I will cultivate it myself. Everyone has a thought, and private itineraries. Some people prefer a peaceful life, simple happiness. Some people like a fight. Life is up and down. Love can be a king, a melon string. It was as simple as holding hands. Life is sometimes sweet, lotus and bitter, but the days of ascension pass. Was so calm. Every time the sunset falls, parents will light a lamp for their children. Let your child's tired heart to be printed in jars in Jilla. Parents don't expect their children to shine brightly. I just hope that I will be as free as the wind.
Enjoyed the video? Hit subscribe, drop a like, share with your crew, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk movies.